Welcome to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast, powered by StatRoute.com. And now, here's your host, Ryan Skullroot.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullroot. I'm your host, and we have a fun little show for you. We've got a few things we're going to go over with the news. A lot of breaking news that has happened over the last few, not even necessarily really few days since the draft happened. We are going to go over some way too early ADPs and what it's looking like in different types of leagues. And then we'll call it a show. So not a huge show today, but should be a whole lot of fun with what we've got going on. So we want to start off with a couple of announcements that we've got going on. First, we talked about this last week that we were updating the website. Well, the update has now finished. We have gotten basically restructured the entire website. We got a whole new theme going on, whole new design. And we really hope that you guys like it. Again, you can check it out at skullkingfootball.com. A little more clean, streamlined, and we hope that you guys are able to navigate it a little bit easier than the last design that we had. Number 2, the draft guide is on pre-sale. It is officially on pre-sale, ready to go for you guys to go ahead and pre-order for a discount. I believe right now we've got it for. The PDF version will be $7. The full web version will be, right now is going to be $21. And then once it goes live in July, on July 1st, it will go to $10 and $30. So make sure to pre-order that now so that once it goes live in July, you guys will be able to have had a little bit of a discount on it and ready to go. Last announcement that I have to make. This is somewhat personal, but I think it helps to build the Skull King brand. I have been asked to be a regular guest host or a regular call-in guest for WEI's The Sports Exchange. It is an online sports talk show, and so for the next few months, I'll be on there once a month to kind of talk some fantasy football, and then once August hits, I'll be on there once a week talking fantasy football, giving advice to their listeners. So kind of a big thing for me personally, but also, for the website and for the podcast here, just drawing in a little more attention and hopefully we're able to help continue to build this and be able to provide more info and more advice for all of our followers and all of our listeners. So that's what we've got going on. So why don't we go ahead and hop into the headlines.
Today's headlines.
All right, so today's headlines, we are on Sleeper, and we're going to go ahead and start with a couple of things that happened just after the draft. With the Rosen trade to Miami, their offense coordinator has said that Rosen will have to earn the starting job. We will see who earns that, whether it's Rosen or Fitzpatrick. I can see Fitzpatrick getting a little more of the work, depending on how things work out in camp. T.J. Hawkinson is expected to be the Week 1 starter. I would expect that when you take him number 8 overall as a tight end. It'll be interesting to see how the Lions use him in the tight end position, considering that they've had trouble really using tight ends. And of course, again, that may have just been a chemistry thing with Eric Ebron and Matt Stafford, but it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I think that he's going to be great in the NFL, not only as a pass catcher, but especially as a blocker, helping out the run game in Detroit. Doug Baldwin, there's a few things coming on about Doug Baldwin. An announcement about his possible retirement is not likely to come anytime soon, which we're kind of expecting. They've kind of, in hearing from the Seahawks up here in Seattle, it's they've talked about the fact that there is that it's kind of up to him, that there's a lot that he has to overcome in order to be ready to be able to come back. So So that's kind of what's going on with Doug Baldwin. It kind of became apparent that this is good, that his retirement's going to be an issue. When they drafted 3 wide receivers in the draft. So, moving on up here, the Colts have signed former Chiefs running back Spencer Ware. I believe he's more depth. It's going to be more of the kind of that Robert Turbin role. Is going to be my guess on how the Colts would be using Spencer Ware. Fantasy football legend Jamal Charles signed a 1-year or a 1-day contract to retire with the Chiefs. Played 11 years, 4-time Pro Bowler, 7,500 rushing yards, almost 2,600 receiving yards, 5.4 yards per carry, which is the 4th all-time, 310 catches, 64 total touchdowns. So just an amazing career from Jamal Charles when he was healthy. He did deal with some ACL injuries last little bit of his career, which is always tough for an athlete to have to deal with and have their career cut short because of things that aren't necessarily in their control. Just is never fun. So we want to say congratulations to Jamal Charles for the amazing career, and especially for those who had him in his good years. And for the years that he won a few people their fantasy championships. So, moving on, T.Y. Hilton on new draft pick Paris Campbell and the competition behind him at wide receiver this year. This is what T.Y. Hilton had to say. The rookie we just got, he's fast, he's athletic, can run routes, great hands, great after the catch, and the guys here, they've got to step up. There's going to be competition at every spot. I really think that this just goes to the fact that Paris Campbell is very talented. There were thoughts that he could possibly go in the first round by some gurus, but most likely in the second or third. He landed in a really good spot, I think, playing opposite T.Y. Hilton. He'll be able to kind of move in the slot. He'll be able to play outside opposite T.Y. Hilton. I think that he is going to provide some more open areas for T.Y. to be able to get loose and just be a help make T.Y. Hilton that much better and Andrew Luck that much better. So really, I think that the Paris Campbell addition is going to be huge for the Colts offense, not only for Andrew Luck but also for T.Y. Hilton. The Rams. There's a lot going on with the Rams, especially in the backfield. The Rams might use more 2-back formations. This is just pulling Todd Gurley farther and farther down in my rankings. The more I'm hearing, with them drafting, I believe it was Darrell Henderson that they drafted, and so with the Rams just not really feeling like they can commit, I think, to Todd Gurley being the guy, is kind of is disconcerting for fantasy football players. I know that there's a fantasy football guru that basically says he is avoiding Todd Gurley at all costs in fantasy, that Todd Gurley sucks, and he's dealing with injury, and I think that this is continuing to show that he is dealing with injury. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how they work that backfield and who's going to be in there working with him. The Chargers have kind of it's speculation. Speculation saying that the Chargers could use rookie QB Easton Stick like the Saints used Taysom Hill. That's kind of honestly been the way that a lot of people have described him, and kind of said that it's kind of the way that he's looking as a prospect. So I'm not really expecting much else out of Easton Stick. We didn't have extremely high hopes for him, to be honest, as a prospect this year. So, or even, I think that if they're looking for their quarterback of the future, I think they'll probably find it in another draft. I think the Easton Stick was just kind of some guy that they could possibly use in multiple different facets. So, on the first major injury of the season, Raiders running back Isaiah Crowell tore his Achilles during a workout with the team Monday, is out for the season per source. He will undergo season-ending surgery next week. Absolutely brutal for a guy that signed a 1-year prove-it deal and gets injured so he can't just not able to go through with it. Absolutely just gutting. This opens up more room for Josh Jacobs, the first-round draft pick for the Raiders. They have since, with Crowell going down, they have since signed Doug Martin, and Gruden says that he believes Doug Martin will be a good mentor to Josh Jacobs. We'll kind of see. I still think that Jacobs is the guy to own in that backfield. I don't think that's changing. I think that was kind of the way it was going to be anyways. There's also been reports that Marshawn may be that Marshawn Lynch would return if the Raiders called, but Oakland now has a crowded running back room. They do. They have also got Jalen Richard, Chris Warren. So they've got a whole bunch of people in their running back room. So I don't think that really that Doug Martin is going to play much of a role. I think that if Josh Jacobs is healthy, the Raiders are going to give him the role and just let him run with it. So report that the Vikings have fielded trade calls on Zach or on their tight end Rudolph, which is not unexpected. They actually signed Irv Smith Jr. officially. He has already signed his contract and is good to go. So he is their tight end of the future. This has been, I think that Rudolph is on the last year of his deal, and I think that the Vikings are just trying to see what they can get out of him. So let's see. Got a couple of things. Cliff Kingsbury, okay. Coach is kind of annoying me, to be completely honest. Cliff Kingsbury has stated that we will see if Murray starts week 1. You're going to start Murray week 1. I mean, you don't have anyone else as a quarterback. I don't have the depth chart up in front of me, but they don't have anyone worth starting week 1 unless Kyler Murray is injured. You drafted him number 1 overall for a reason, and so you're going to start him. I mean, there shouldn't be any question there. I think that he's just trying to play down a little bit, the whole Kyler Murray thing, and trying to just tamper expectations. But when you draft him number 1 overall, you basically set up yourself for expectations. So that's what I have to say about that. He is going to start week 1. The Bucs receivers coach Kevin Garver talked a little bit about Chris Godwin and how he could be involved in the slot as well as outside the season. Chris Godwin, he's getting a lot of hype everywhere. From what I know and what I've seen of his tape from last year, if you followed us at all last year, you saw him just being hyped up like crazy from us. Every week he was owned just under 50% in just under 50% of leagues, and so he was always on our waiver wire call list. A guy that was very productive. I think he finishes right around the wide receiver 30 in PPR. Really had a breakout season last year, and I think he can do even more this year, especially if they're putting him in the slot, which with Bruce Arians' passing attack is going to be huge for Chris Godwin, because I think that if they put him in the slot, that is going to be a good Bruce Arians has already said that Chris Godwin could catch 100 passes this season. So I think that Godwin is definitely a guy to watch for this next season. He's a guy that I'm going to be all over, again, unless an injury happens sometime during the preseason. I'm all over Chris Godwin. Yes, this does not take away from the fact that the Buccaneers still have Mike Evans. I've seen that argument all over. When anyone talks about Chris Godwin, yeah, don't they still have Mike Evans? They still have Mike Evans. Mike Evans is going to be the guy. Yes, Mike Evans is still going to be the big play, big guy that they're going to lean on. However, with how heavy this passing attack is going to be and with the absolute complete lack of running backs with Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones, they're still going to rely on the passing game and the wide receivers. Plus, they have a couple of really good tight ends in Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard. So, again, just things to watch for. But I am definitely going to be a believer in Chris Godwin and looking forward to see what he can do this preseason to prep up for this next season. So, okay, let's cover the big, suspension news or whatever we want to call it with Tyreek Hill and the confusion that especially in some of the Chiefs fans that I've seen over the last couple weeks. Chiefs fans have just been all over the place, whether it's eating Tyreek Hill for dinner, saying that the guy's, a horrible person, which that very well could be, to saying, don't believe everything that you say, wait for this to play out. I tend to be on the wait for this to play out thing. And with what it looked like with the was it the sound of the call being released, saying that Tyreek Hill said to his girlfriend Crystal Espinal that she needed to be afraid of him, and then like a day or two later, there was a letter sent to the NFL when it was announced that it very well could be that Tyreek Hill gets put on the exempt list. It comes out in a letter that they texted back and forth to each other, Tyreek and his girlfriend, that why would you say these things about me? I didn't hit our son. And her responding, I know, I was just mad. I wanted to blame you for everything. I question it, to be completely honest. I understand that was probably on their phones. I also believe that it could be a setup, something to try to make it look like something it's not. I don't know. We this is going to have to be something that's dug into deeper. I'm still waiting to see if there's more, and then at that point I will make my final decision. Right now, at this point it doesn't look like he's going to be charged from what I've seen. So like I said, we're going to let this play out a little bit. He still could get suspended. Even if he's not charged, he could still get suspended by the NFL. We saw that with Ezekiel Elliott a couple of years ago. So definitely something to watch out for, though. Vikings rookie tight end, he signed his deal. Moving up here, a couple more things. Running back Dexter Williams has signed his rookie contract with the Packers. So definitely interesting to see how that works in that backfield with Dexter Williams, Aaron Jones, and Jamal Williams. From what I've seen of Dexter Williams, I like him the most out of those three. Jamal Williams was kind of back and forth. He was never really the highly touted prospect that we thought he could have been. Never really did much that we thought he could have from a couple years ago when we, kind of looking at him. And Aaron Jones as well. Aaron Jones was almost in that Tyreek Hill mode a little bit, and just kind of smaller school. I think he went to was it UTEP, Texas El Paso, and so he really showed up the last couple of years and did well, but he's been fighting injuries. Again, Jamal Williams has been fighting injuries. I don't know. I've not looked at that deeply into Dexter Williams on if he's been fighting injuries, but he's definitely a guy that I would watch, that I think could possibly take over that backfield this year. I think that he is probably talented enough to do that, just from what I've seen and the injury history that has happened with the other two quarterbacks or the other two running backs in that backfield. He's one of those running backs that nothing may come of it, but I'm definitely keeping my eye on that backfield situation. So, Good news from Emmanuel Sanders, who suffered a torn Achilles on December 5th today, a couple days ago, yesterday. He ran for the first time with cleats on since the injury. He seems to be coming along nicely. It seems like a lot of guys are coming along from their injuries from last year pretty well, and so that's encouraging to see, especially for dynasty owners of Emmanuel Sanders. And with the Broncos offense, just with the draft in this year, that they have some things to work on. It'll be interesting to see what kind of goes on with the wide receiver core. Again, you got Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton. So again, just there's some pieces to look at and see kind of how Emmanuel Sanders still fits in if he can get healthy. And last but not least, we mentioned at the beginning of the show with Doug Baldwin. Pete Carroll said there's nothing new on the Doug Baldwin front. But again, he hints at the retirement, saying that he has, quote, a lot to overcome. I actually watched that interview today, so very nice to see that in that interview he talked about DK Metcalf and how he is impressing in camp. There's a story on NFL.com talking about both DK and Paris Campbell and how they have really impressed so far with what they're able to do in mini camps so far, and rookie mini camps that are going on right now. So very encouraging to see that going on with those two players and the possible fantasy implications that they could present this next season in 2019. So, alrighty, so that is it for the news and notes. So now what we're going to do is, like I said, we're gonna take our last few minutes here of this show, and we're going to look at some way too early average draft position outlooks. So let me make sure I've got this set up correctly. Thought I did. All right, so starting with the quarterbacks and just looking at where everyone's going. Patrick Mahomes right now, average draft position, I want to say, is this a 10? Let's set it for 12. Set it for 12 and for quarterbacks. All right, so PPR, average draft position. So in a PPR league, average draft position for quarterbacks in 12-team leagues, Patrick Mahomes is going as the 3.01. So he is the first pick off the board in round 3. Obviously, with everything that he did last year and how he was able to affect games with his arm, coming close to, I can't remember, I don't have it in front of me, coming close to, if not setting, I believe he was close to setting the all-time highest fantasy football score. That may still be Peyton Manning. Andrew Luck is the second quarterback off the board, numbered at the end of the 4th round, 410. And then back-to-back in round 5, Aaron Rodgers and Baker Mayfield is the number 4 quarterback off the board in 12-team PPR leagues. And now, I understand the hype with Baker Mayfield. At the same time, I feel like that's a little too early. And I'm hoping that, as we get through the summer, again, these are way too early ADPs. This is just what's going on right now. But it seems a little premature for me to think that Baker Mayfield is the number 4 quarterback in fantasy. Especially going this far above Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers. I will get to some of these guys, but I think that Baker Mayfield's being a little overhyped. I understand that he has a lot of weapons now. He still has Jarvis Landry, still has David Njoku. They've got Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt is coming back halfway through the season, and then they add Odell. So he's got a lot of weapons to work with in this offense. That being said, I still think they're going to do a lot with the run game and Nick Chubb. And so for me, I think I'm not taking Baker Mayfield quite that high. I'd, 6 or 7. I'd have to actually look on my rankings. Let me actually update these real quick because I actually have my rankings have been updated. I just updated those on the website. I have Baker Mayfield as quarterback number. Well, I moved him down to 16. Didn't mean to do that. I have Baker Mayfield right around quarterback 9. Overall on the website right now, on our consensus, we've got 4 of the writers so far that have turned in rankings. Baker Mayfield is the quarterback 9, so that's about where I've got him. I've got to make some adjustments. I can see some things that didn't end up quite how I wanted them to, so I've got to make adjustments there. But I see Baker Mayfield as more like that quarterback 7 or 8, 9, somewhere in there. So Deshaun Watson, 6, the first pick in the 6th. Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson going later in the 6th. Drew Brees beginning of 7. I like Drew Brees in the 7th round. I think that's a good value because I still think that he's going to put up decent numbers in fantasy. There's still going to be a pass-heavy team. Working with Alvin Kamara, a lot of passes out of the backfield. So I still like Drew Brees there. Carson Wentz. I don't like Carson Wentz above Cam Newton. I just don't know if Carson Wentz can stay healthy. Then who knows? Cam Newton can stay healthy with how many shots he takes as well. So Jameis Winston is getting hyped for sure. Going at number 12 behind Jared Goff and above Phillip Rivers. I'm still trying to figure out why Phillip Rivers is falling down so far. After this last season, I'm trying to figure out where Phillip Rivers finished off. I don't have that in front of me, but I had a league where his fantasy stats, I want to say had him finish right around number 5, quarterback number 5 or 6. So definitely I think that if you can get him that far as like the 12th or 13th quarterback off the board, you have great value there at that point. So let me see real quick. No, all right. So let's move on. Quarterbacks right here, and then working your way down. Josh Allen at number. Let's see. You got Phillip Rivers at 13. Jimmy Garoppolo at 14. Josh Allen at 15. I think that Josh Allen could be a value and could move up in. Could move up. I think that he could finish around number 10. And mainly that's because of his running ability and his ability to run the ball, escape the pocket. So he is definitely a guy that I would have my eye on as a possible sleeper to move up. Ben Roethlisberger 16, Tom Brady 17. I think that with Ben Roethlisberger, you're dealing with home and away splits and how just god awful he is on the road, but how good he is at home. He no longer has Antonio Brown. He no longer has Le'Veon Bell. So seeing how all that works out will be interesting. For right now, he's going as quarterback number 16. Tom Brady is quarterback number 17. And while all those Tom Brady zealots, just remember this is fantasy football and not regular football. So, all right, so that's kind of how the layout is there. Following up Brady, Kyler Murray at 18, Sam Darnold at 19, and Kirk Cousins at 20, rounding out the top 20 quarterbacks. Take a quick look at the running backs and how they are going. Let me see what we got. So 12-team running backs, kind of average draft position. Kind of go through this real quick. Saquon, then Ezekiel, McCaffrey, Kamara. I'm somewhat surprised that McCaffrey is going just above Kamara. But that could switch. They're 1.3 and 1.4. So Le'Veon Bell is going as the number 5. I personally have him around 8 or 9. Melvin Gordon, David Johnson, Todd Gurley at the 8th position, or the 8th running back off the board. James Conner, end of the first round as the 9th running back. Just kind of going down the list a little bit, seeing if there's anyone that sort of sticks out. Devonta Freeman at 19, I can understand. He is an extremely talented running back. However, he's had problems staying healthy and staying on the field. And the offense run by Steve Sarkisian has not necessarily been the greatest for Devonta Freeman. So, Chris Carson is running back 20. I like Philip Lindsay as the number 22 off the board in PPR. The thing about Philip Lindsay is they didn't really use him as a receiving back. And that could have just been Case Keenum. It could have been the offense. I know that Joe Flacco has liked throwing the ball out of the backfield to running backs. Did it a lot with Justin Forsett. And so I think that Lindsay could get a little more of the pass game going after running for 1,000 yards last year. Josh Jacobs is number 24. Tariq Cohen is number 25 off the board in PPR. I still think Tariq Cohen is a top 15 running back in PPR, just with the way they use him. And so I think that that's a value in that number 4 or end of the 4th round at running back number 25. I still think the 6th round for Kareem Hunt is too early. The 7th round for Latavius Murray. It all depends on how he's used opposite Alvin Kamara. So, looking at some others, David Montgomery. I like David Montgomery at number 37. He is definitely a guy that I will be looking at picking up and drafting this year. I think that I somewhat agree with a lot of the comps that have him compared to Kareem Hunt in his playing style. And I think that he could take over for Mike Davis in that offense as the main bruiser back and also have the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. So definitely a guy that I like for this year in David Montgomery. Let's see. And beyond that, Austin Eckler at 9th round, I think that's about right. Number 42, just because it's going to be so back and forth on whether or not he's used. Mike Davis at 41, going behind David Montgomery. I think the writing's already on the wall for Mike Davis there. And look, just kind of looking down here, I'm not seeing anyone that really sticks out to me as great value. C.J. Anderson right now is going as the running back number 64 in the 13th round. Definitely a guy that I would consider, especially if you can get him that late. We'll kind of see how the trends go over the rest of the summer. Moving on to wide receivers. Let me set this as a 12 team. Actually, I had it set as a 14 team. All right, so 12 team, wide receivers. Not a whole lot of surprises here. DeAndre is the first wide receiver. Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Odell. Juju Smith-Schuster is number 6. Antonio Brown number 7. I am somewhat surprised, and at the same time not surprised, that Adam Thielen is going at the end of the 2nd round at the 210 mark as the 9th wide receiver off the board. Again, looking at the tendencies of Kirk Cousins, he's very much a quarterback that likes throwing to that slot receiver. That's where they put Adam Thielen a lot. You've got Stephon Diggs, who's more of that outside guy that they've right now is being drafted a full round behind Adam Thielen. Value-wise, that may be the way to go. It was with Stephon Diggs. I think that they're both going to be about the same. It's a better value to get that out of Stephon Diggs in the 3rd round than it is to get Adam Thielen at the end of the 2nd. So I'm not seeing really any surprises. Julian Edelman at 15 is a little bit of a surprise, simply because even though it is PPR, I still usually tend to find him closer to about number 20 by the end of the year just because he doesn't score the touchdowns. And you've got Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods going back-to-back with Kenny. So 16, 17, and 19, you've got the 3 wide receivers from the LA Rams with Kenny Golladay splitting them all up. I'd like to see Kenny Golladay really make another step forward this year and possibly, see if he can work his way into that wide receiver 1 range. Jarvis Landry, wide receiver number 20. Calvin Ridley, a lot of things expected of Calvin Ridley. I've seen a couple debates going on. Between Calvin Ridley and Chris Godwin, who is going to have the better year? So for me, I am personally on the Chris Godwin train more than I am on the Calvin Ridley train. I think that Julio is going to take so much attention that he's and that's from Matt Ryan. He's going to take so much attention from Matt Ryan that it's going to be a little. It's going to take a game where Ryan basically ignores Julio in order to make Calvin Ridley have decent games. That's personally my opinion. I don't think that Calvin Ridley isn't talented. I just see more consistency, personally, from Chris Godwin. Now, it may end up in the end of the year that Calvin Ridley outscores Chris Godwin, but I think you're going to have a harder time picking which week to start him. I think he's going to be a little bit more of a roller coaster than it will be with Chris Godwin, who I think will get 7 to 8 targets a game and come down with 5 to 6 catches. I think that Chris Godwin this year finishes close to 1,000 yards. I could see him getting the 100 receptions. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just too much part of the Chris Godwin hype train. But having been on his hype train for 2 years now, I'm somewhat invested. Mike Williams is going as, Chris Godwin, then DJ Moore. Mike Williams, I see having a very good year, going at the end of round 5 with Keenan Allen as the number 1 receiver there, and then losing Tyrell Williams to the Raiders. I think that provides a lot more opportunity for Mike Williams to have a breakout year. Tyler Lockett down at the wide receiver number 26 in the beginning of the 6th round. For right now, because of everything that's been going on with Tyreek Hill, he's going in the 6th round behind Tyler Lockett. I expect that once we figure out if he's going to be suspended or not, everything will level out with Tyreek Hill in terms of where he's going to end up in his draft position. So, and then kind of rounding out the top 30, Tyler Boyd in round 6, Sammy Watkins in round 6, Allen Robinson in beginning of round 7. Guys that I think that could really step up and really break out. Kind of moving down the list. Not really seeing a whole lot that I really, really like. Tyrell Williams maybe could kind of have that. Right now he's being drafted number 54 in the 12th round. A lot of this, honestly, we've got to wait to see what's going on throughout training camps and everything. All right, and finally, we're going to take a quick peek at the tight ends and what kind to expect from them and where they're going in drafts right now. And really, the only reason we're covering it like this now is because there are there are players that doing best ball leagues that draft early. So, taking a look at these real quick, tight ends. There it is, 12-team tight ends PPR for 2019, and where they're stacking up right now. Travis Kelce is obviously the first tight end off the board, middle of round 2. Zach Ertz, end of round 2. George Kittle, end of round 3. And as far as George Kittle goes, I think that he stays up in that tight end 3 range. A lot of people think that he might jump up and be the tight end 1. I could see a little bit of regression from George Kittle. It all depends on how things go for Jimmy Garoppolo, what things look like for the wide receiver core, if Dante Pettis can step up. Who else? They drafted Jalen Hurd. Who else? I mean, Marquise Goodwin is still there. So depending on what's going on with their wide receiver core, and if someone really steps up, it could take some targets away from George Kittle. So something to look at. I still project George Kittle to finish in that tight end 3 range. So I just won't necessarily take him in the third round. Eric Ebron right now is the 4th tight end off the board in round 5. O.J. Howard, last pick of round 5. Evan Ingram, round 6. I think this could be a good year for Evan Ingram now that Odell Beckham Jr. is gone. Really, at this point now, it's Evan Ingram, Odell, Golden Tate, and what I think they drafted. I think it was Darius. Wasn't Darius Slayton? I have to look. I can't remember the rookie that they drafted, wide receiver, but it was another slot receiver type. So just very interesting to see that. So I think that Evan Ingram could have a good year, a solid year, and could very well finish in the top 5 as a tight end again this year. Unlike he didn't do that last year, but the year before he finished, I believe it was top 8. So, and again, that was the year that Odell Beckham Jr. lost most of the season to his I would say is the ankle injury. So, Hunter Henry expected to have a decent year so far, at least as far as the drafters are going right now. Going middle of round 6 is tight end number 7. Jared Cook could have a huge year this year, going in around 6 as the tight end for New Orleans. Definitely something to look at. Vance McDonald, tight end 9. David Njoku, 10. Looking at guys that could possibly step out. Jack Doyle could move up there. Noah Fant, depending on how the Broncos utilize him, definitely a guy to look at as a late round flyer at tight end. And Delanie Walker. I love the guy, but he is getting older and has had a couple of season-ending injuries. I liked him for last year and lost him in game 1. So he's now to the point where I'm avoiding him kind of the way I avoided Greg Olsen last year. So that's kind of my thoughts on where things are going for in terms of how teams or how players are getting drafted way too early right now in leagues, in PPR leagues. So that is all we've got for you today. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to join us, whether you are watching the live stream on Facebook or you are listening to this podcast in its various platforms on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, CastBox, wherever you listen. We want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to us. Make sure, if you could, to subscribe to the podcast on any of those various platforms, whether you subscribe to our YouTube channel or subscribe on iTunes. Like I said, Google Play, Stitcher, CastBox, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Breaker, all those. We're on all of them. So Spotify, please subscribe, leave a review and a rating. We would really appreciate that. We want to hear from you guys. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the podcast, to listen to us. We hope you guys have a great week, and we will talk to you next week. Hey, Skull King Nation. Thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.